Hi, welcome to CBSE Board Economics. Once again, I'm Saddam Hussain here. I welcome you all. Last class, we discussed about revenue budget. We already know there are two parts of budget. One is the revenue budget and the second one is capital budget. Today we'll be analyzing or discussing about capital budget. What exactly is capital budget? This title suggests capital, assets and liabilities. Capital budget basically deals with the changes in assets and liabilities of the government. Capital budget has two components like the revenue budget, capital receipts and capital expenditure. Or in other words, we can say capital budget shows us how the capital expenditure of the government is met with the capital receipts. So capital budget deals with the assets and liabilities of the government, changes in the assets and liabilities. What it means for a layman, if the government is buying buildings, if the government is constructing roads, if the government is constructing scientific research institutions, if the government is constructing bridges, if the government is developing lands, if the government is buying shares and debentures of some companies or acquiring from abroad, we know that assets of the government are going up. The government must have borrowed a lot of money from IMF, International Monetary Fund, World Bank. When we return this money to other countries, so obviously our liabilities are decreasing. So now we got a clear picture of capital budget. Capital budget again has two components, capital receipts and capital expenditure. You can see here capital budget. Capital budget is an account of assets and liabilities of the government. That is the changes in assets and liabilities of the government. That means this year how many assets the government has acquired and how many liabilities of the government have gone up. That's a capital budget. Capital budget has two things, capital receipts and capital expenditure. Now let's put into perspective what exactly is capital receipts. Capital receipts either increase the liabilities of the government or decrease its assets. Capital receipts either increase the liabilities of the government or decrease its assets. What it means, we further discuss it, you'll get a fairly good idea. Capital receipts are again divided into three parts. One is loans. To meet the government's obligations, revenue receipts are not enough. So the government has to construct roads, the government has to construct bridges, the government has to provide facilities to the people, scientific research institutions, schools, colleges. Government doesn't have enough money. What does the government do? They borrow loans. So obviously we know it. Whenever you borrow, the liabilities of the government will go up. They borrow. These borrowings can be World Bank, these borrowings can be IMF, International Monetary Fund, these borrowings can be Asian Bank, or these borrowings can be from foreign countries. Maybe Indian government is borrowing money from UK, USA, France, Germany. So obviously the definition says whenever the government borrows, the liabilities of the government goes up. So that's a capital receipt. The second point, recoveries of loans. What exactly is recoveries of loans? The government must have given loans to the state governments when they had surplus funds. So when the central government needs funds, they recover these loans which the government must have given loans to some other countries. So when the government needs that money, they recover the loans. So assets of the government have gone down. That means financial assets. So we discussed capital receipts either increase the liabilities of the government or decreases assets, recoveries of loans. And the last option, and very dangerous option, disinvestment. When the government doesn't have much funds, what does the government do? Disinvestment. What exactly is disinvestment? Selling bonds, debentures, shares, or selling the shares of public sector undertakings or public sector undertakings. So which are the public undertakings? So recently we take an example. The government is willing to sell Air India. The government has already issued the share certificates for NTPC, National Thermal Power Corporation. They have issued the share certificates of NHPC, National Hydropower Corporation, Rural Electrification Corporation. They keep on selling the shares. Obviously, when they sell the shares or they sell these public sector undertakings, the assets of the government comes down. So now, capital receipts either increase the liabilities or decrease the assets. When the government borrows money or take the loans, liabilities of the government have gone up. When the government recovers loans which they have given it to other countries or the state governments or union territories, its assets have come down, maybe financial assets. And disinvestment, when the government is selling public sector undertakings, obviously the assets of the government will come down. That is the capital receipts. They either increase the liabilities or decrease the assets. Now, whatever the receipts they got that should go into capital expenditure. What exactly is capital expenditure? The government constructs roads, the government constructs schools, colleges, the government constructs scientific research institutions, the government open public sector undertakings, the government lends money to other countries, and government may be buying shares, bonds, debentures, the government is making bridges, roads, machinery, the government is buying. So obviously, these increase the assets of the government. Or when the government returns the money which they borrowed from other countries, WHO, World Bank, or they borrowed money from foreign governments, when they return this, obviously liabilities come down. The definition is capital expenditure either decrease the liabilities or increase the assets. How increase the assets? When the government is constructing buildings, scientific research institutions, assets of the government have gone up. Or how does it decrease the liabilities? When they return the money which they borrowed from World Bank, liabilities of the government have come down. So we'll make a comparative study of this. I'll give you a complete revision of what exactly is capital budget. Capital budget consists of capital receipts and capital expenditure. Capital budget shows the changes in the assets and liabilities of the government over a fiscal year. It has two components, capital receipts and capital expenditure. Make a comparative study, capital receipts and capital expenditure. Capital receipts either increase the liabilities of the government or decrease its assets. And capital expenditure either increase the assets of the government or decrease its liabilities. Capital receipts are divided into three parts: loans or borrowings. Whenever the government borrows money from other governments or from World Bank, the liabilities of the government have gone up. Number two, recoveries of loans. Whenever the government recovers the loans which they had given it to the state governments or union territories, the liabilities of the government have, assets of the government have come down. And disinvestment, whenever government issues the shares for public sector undertakings, or maybe they are selling it, assets of the government have come down. And capital expenditure, as I told you, either increase the assets or decrease the liabilities of the government. This can be buildings, this can be machinery which the government is buying, roads, bridges. This can be research institutions buying shares, buying land, and it can be giving loans to other countries. This is the capital. So government budget is divided into two parts: revenue budget and capital budget. Revenue budget, we have already seen it. Capital budget shows the assets and liabilities of the government, changes in the assets and liabilities. It has two things: capital budget receipts and capital expenditure. So that's all we have time for today. Till we meet next time, it's goodbye from Saddam Hussain. Work hard for your exams. Don't forget to subscribe